your own time. They're there for you. You can check out the chat. But yeah, I'll let Brian take it away.
Okay, so I have a DSLR camera in here, guys, so that I can focus on some of the drawings and stuff that I'm doing. My computer, I can't lift it up and move it around. So you can go to YouTube, or I think we're gonna do a share screen, and then you hopefully get a higher quality one. It should be archived too, so if there's something I say that you missed, you can go back to it. But I would suggest you have your sketchbook handy, because I'm gonna say something you're gonna wanna have a note from. Also, you can put in either the YouTube chat or the Zoom chat your questions, and I will get to them at the very end. So let's get started. How do we study the figure through Master Studies? Well, I want to thank you for the opportunity of doing this, because when Leah asked me to do it, I just spent the entire front end of this year on my live stream doing Master Studies on video. So you guys can go watch those, you can scan through them. Sometimes it seems like I'm losing my mind because it's difficult to speak for 3 hours while you're drawing, but they are instructional. So excluding this one I did of Michelangelo, which YouTube took down because genitalia, I think, you can go on there and just see different methods of study in more of a long format. Figure drawing and figure study is a practice. There are many ups and downs throughout it. Nobody comes by it genius with all the skills right out of the gate. Everything must be learned in the steps. And it's not going to be easy, and I just want to be honest with you that it's going to take like 15 years. Your AU Arts education is not going to be enough to get you to be as good as you think you'd like to be in that from your college. I went to AU Arts. In fact, I taught there for many years. I taught figure, drawing, Con Ed stuff. And I saw that there was a real need to open up a different type of art school, which we'll talk about the learnings that go on here and how we approach figure. Because if you really want to do this, you've got to put your time in. So there's no shortcuts. And which masters are you going to study? Okay? Michelangelo for his twisting bodies. Your favorite painters and whatnot. I don't want to talk about who you're going to study, because why are you doing it? You like the way they draw or paint. There's something aesthetically pleasing, or you think that there's something that they have to offer that you can learn from. Okay? It's not only learning the muscles. In fact, I would say don't even bother with that for the first number of years. Just you like their work. You might want to learn their treatment, or you might want your work to look like theirs. So aesthetic. Now let's get to the good stuff. I'm Brian Batista. My friends call me Bunny. It's a long story, and we have less than an hour. And here at Atelier Artista is my art school in Marda Loop. We have big, beautiful, north-facing windows and slate chalkboards. I like to keep the look historical because what we teach here is contemporary realism through appreciation of qualities and skills. We don't worry about ideas here. In fact, I don't care about ideas. The school that you're going to is the best at that. They teach you how to pump out ideas like you wouldn't believe. So here I assume you are coming with ideas, and there's a reason behind what you want to learn, and we'll teach you the skills. We have classes, workshops, and we regularly host figure sessions, which maybe a few of you have come here before. I know Leah has, when we're not on lockdown. I know that there are a lot of other places in the city, none of which are open right now, so I'll be the first to open and probably the only to open for a while. So I suggest if you want to learn from life that you can come down here. Now, obviously that's biased, right? I'm plugging myself. I think for figure drawing and master studies, you need a teacher. You can't know what you don't know. And really, teaching someone to draw or studying the figure doesn't, it's not about how you hold the pencil or how you're drawing your technique. It's about learning to see. And we have blind spots, things we don't know, and we can't see them ourselves. So we need leaders before us. And some of the teachers I'm going to talk about today are ways of seeing differently. Here, we also have a great community. So when you go to these figure sessions, you can just talk to your neighbor. Everyone who's on this journey is at a different point, and is probably very passionate about what they're doing, even though, you know, you have bad days, you have your ups and downs. So I would say that you guys having this wonderful group together is one of the best ways that you can learn to draw better if you're honest with each other, but nice, right? Let's try to be constructive with our criticisms. So I designed the school. The Atelier here is traditionally based like classical art schools were. I had workshops and residencies and studied abroad. Italy, I went to Belas Artes for a residency in Portugal, Paris Academy of Art, Whitby Arts, and I learned under people who were really good. You guys can, there's people all over, you can fly to places and you can learn. But I based this school off of a niche that I saw Calgary was lacking, that we could do a focus study. We could do master studies here because this is an incredible city full of super creative people. And if you like the outdoors, we've got the mountains. So there's no reason we really have to leave Calgary, right? Like, let's do it here. That was my plan. I'm not even a Calgarian, but I love it here so much that I put all my money where my mouth is and opened this place. Okay, so let's talk about what mastery is. And that's a really good segue, because every time I'm on an airplane flying to one of these European countries or where museums are, I read this book. This book is called Mastery. It is not mastery of painting or drawing. It is just mastery of life. I have a long, extensive background in martial arts, and the guy who wrote this book is an Aikido master. And the reason I read this book is to get myself in the mental mindset of how do I perfect my practice. And that's really what this talk is going to be about today. Some of the things you guys need to do, like obviously get a good teacher, but don't just learn from one, learn from others, learn their different style, watch videos on YouTube. I will say that a lot of the videos and a lot of the references and books you'll find are garbage. So what I'm going to show you today is not the garbage, and you can pick from that. You need to start by learning a method and sticking with it. The human brain wants novel things. What's new? What new technique? Oh, what if I put it between my toes? Well, that's only going to get you so far, and it's only interesting at the very beginning. What you need to do is figure out a method that works for you and work it at least 3 to 6 months. Within that method, you'll start to notice things like the epicondyles on the side of the knee. As long as you keep saying to the same pattern, rather than jumping from thing to thing, like a mosquito biting and sucking blood, you'll never get anywhere that way. You'll just be lost. The thing about mastery is you need to know where you want to go, which is why master studies are perfect. Because if you want to draw like that guy over there, you can work the steps over and over again until it becomes integrated into your practice. Okay? The next one, prioritize your time. We only have so much time in our lives. I know we're all young, and even though there's a pandemic, we think we're going to live forever. Prioritize your time with one of these. Buy a timer or use your phone or your watch. So they say the journey to mastery is 10,000 hours. Oh my God, that is terribly frightening. But I did some math. If you practice an hour every day, so you know, Inktober and stuff, you practice, probably 20 minutes to an hour, it would take you 27 years of everyday practicing to become a master. I don't have that kind of time. So I need to prioritize and have a more focused study. The other reason why you're going to want to use a timer is because really figure drawing and master studies are an act of time management. The greatest thing I learned while I was at ACAD, AU Arts now, was how to use my time so I can go out and party. And the thing about the amount that we can focus or the amount of time you put in, it's about the quality of time, not the amount. I'll give you another example in another art that I use often. You can practice guitar every day for an hour. And after a month or two, you'll start to get pretty good. But if you practice on Sunday for 7 hours to make up for the other 6 days you missed, you'll have bleeding fingers and you'll have learned nothing. And the same goes for cramming, right? Trying to learn everything the night before. It goes in. And then as soon as you puke it out, it's gone. So you haven't really learned anything at all. So my suggestion is to keep a consistent time of practice, and also to learn that short pose is different than long pose. 10-minute poses you practice, it's a different skill. So really use your time well, because rather than spending 6 hours on a drawing that looks like you spent 2 hours, try to get reverse that. Less time, more effect, more learning. Because, the other thing about the classical arts is they spend 20 hours on these drawings. Rendering, yeah, and they look about 10% better than the hour and a half you could spend. So it's about getting smarter and working smarter, but not harder, okay? So let's talk quickly about the perfect practice. And I'll use my board. Okay, step number 1 in all the art schools. Learn to copy. Okay, well that's what we're talking about here. But just being a photocopier isn't great, because you could just trace. You could take a photo of a model and just trace it. Are you really learning figure? Probably not. But by mimicking, we learn how to see better. Okay, and we'll talk about the Barg stuff right away here, and then it will make sense why you would do that. The next, when drawing a figure, is not copying exactly what you see, but learning to improve. Okay, what else is an improvement? Stylization. So if you learn the Loomis method that the body is 8 heads high, well, some artists like Titian made them 10 or 11, or Botticelli elongated the neck, because that stylistically was a choice they wanted to make. So they learned to copy first, then they made adjustments to fit their vision. The third and highest form here, I would say, is you invent it completely. I'm not saying invent a human with an extra arm or something, but you could not have a model in front of you, and you could draw them in any which way or position. And this is the highest level, I think, because you are actually creating. Okay? So we'll say invent. That's what like comic book artists and stuff are doing if they don't have reference. Okay? However, when we're learning art, we start here, because that's how children start. Then we have our own style. So we're making mistakes. Maybe I made the legs a little too long. And then we got to go all the way back to relearning how to do it proper. And I would suggest do it in this order rather than this order. Because as you're in this section and you have your own stylistic mistakes, you are actually creating the same pattern, the same mistake over and over again, and not actually learning it properly. Okay, well, what approaches can we take? And I'm going to make my, I've never actually taught it this way before, so let's see how it works out. So the holy trinity of art education, it's an Illuminati pyramid. And I want to be sure you guys know that this is not a hierarchy, but I'm going to put AU Arts at the top. Okay? The style of contemporary art school, which is all over the entire world, are about creativity, making ideas. You go with your feeling. You can use your intuition to draw the figure. There's not a lot of master copy classes, as you'll know. And really it's about lucking into it or developing a process that is individualistic to you. And if you did master copy studies but didn't have a methodology and didn't learn the name of the muscles, you would eventually get to something good. The other two, and so they're not equal or unequal, but just different ways of looking at it. Okay, so we have academies. That's funny. ACAD. Academies, which would be the European style of school, which you can fit ateliers into. Neither of those words are really a regulated body, but these use timeless principles built on solid foundations to pursue the study. And so you would learn exactly the steps it took, and I would call it a reductive art form. And Barg studies are that, where it's almost like someone gives you a block of marble or wood, and you cut away the pieces until you arrive at something. So negative shapes, they do this at the Florence Academy, the Barg studies are that, and all of that, I would say, is called sight size. So it's measured, it's almost mechanical in many ways, and it's a great way to learn, and some of my videos are that method. The other way is I'll put my atelier here, but it's not just my atelier, there are many others, which we work additively. Took me a second to figure out how to spell that. Additively. So what we want to do is we want to master drawing the cylinder, or squares, the basic forms that make up the body, because we can then invent. The other thing that's advantageous but much harder is sight size means you can only draw something the size you see it, so you need to get near or far from your subject, and you stand in the same place. But in the Atelier or additive method, we do comparative anatomy. So I say, well, this is the same length as the head, so I can draw the head 4 feet tall, therefore the forearm is 4 feet tall. And it takes longer to learn, but I think it has more payoff. So here's the thing. Any 3 of these methods is like a stool. You'll always be in balance. But if you do half the Atelier method and half the Academy method, you'll still arrive at the same place in the middle. So this one I'm cutting out shapes and shading. This one I'm building forms to give the illusion of 3-dimensional forms coming off of a flat page. So this one I'm looking at a flat page and treating the images flat. You guys might have heard of the book Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. That would be this style. And then over here in the other style would be Cal Arts and Watts Atelier and anything from Russia as well, because they're learning to draw simple shapes and forms. Really good for animation and really good for comic books. Whereas this, not so great for that stuff. This is more about getting to that render, and we'll see in my examples where that fits in. Okay, so why does all this matter? How are you going to learn with the resources that are available to you? And where to put your energy is what I want to talk about. Books, videos, classes, workshops, free resources, which I'll talk about. But you can go buy all of them. I have an entire table in front of me right now of all my collection, but it took years to amass. You guys have a phenomenal library at the school, and if you have a regular library card, there are tons of free resources available, and movies on there too, through Canopy. So, let me just jump over to my books. Now, I'm going to do these in an order of year of the artist who taught it. And number 1 is our Renaissance master, Leonardo da Vinci. You need to study Leonardo's work. Leonardo's anatomical drawings include the human skeleton, muscles, sinews, the vascular system, sex organs, internal organs, fetuses in utero. And he made a huge, major contribution to medical science, because in the beginning, a lot of this stuff was philosophy. The Catholic Church didn't want you carving up bodies, but Leonardo had a chance to do that, and he wrote it down. We also are aware of the Vitruvian Man, the circling of the square. So he is a good, solid foundation. If you want to do a master copy, start there. The next one of my faves, here, let me see, oh yeah, that doesn't do much, is Vesuvius. Okay, I've got this book for $2. If you go to like Fair's Fair or you know, these book sales, there are ways to acquire this stuff. It might be at the bottom of your parents' shelves even. A lot of the books here you just acquire, and you know, some of them are bad. Get rid of those ones and trade up. Vesuvius is awesome. He is referred to as the founder of modern anatomy. Let me just show you his stuff. Now, his style was called écorché, and that's like, I'll find a good one, a flayed body. But as art, they are stunning. I hope that's in focus for you guys. Écorché is another classical method of study where you actually build a sculpture from starting with the bones, thus learning the bones. It takes about a year. You cut out each muscle and you apply it to your skeleton. You'll learn a lot of anatomy through doing it the classical way. Okay, another book down. Now the big one, Charles Bargue. And you guys may be aware of Bargue. I have some here. I'll just pull out some of my Bargue drawings. Now, Charles Bargue, he kind of standardized what we do at the ateliers. And that is, he was a lithograph maker, and what he would do is he would do a rendered drawing of something that he lit and studied from classical antiquity, And so on one, these would be huge lithographs, and on, this is actually almost the right size. On one side it would be the line drawing that you would learn to meticulously copy, and then on the other side it would show you what to then do with the shading to get the form. The idea being, oh yeah, like how to study the eyes, right? So he studied from classical sculptures and made these lithographs. Here's some class ones, right? So you would learn the steps. Now, these can take 6 to 20 hours, right? You're becoming like a photocopier. And I think they really teach you the professionalism of finished rendered work as an artist. And I think everyone should do at least 9 of them. And you can buy his book. And although it's not big enough, you can acquire the full-size copies and print them out. I even have a lot of them as a PDF. And you would go through that process. Now that process is classical, academy-style art learning. And it's painful. It really sucks. But you can sell the drawings after. It was meant to be for high school students, and they wanted to standardize it. So before you would go to the École des Beaux-Arts and stuff, you would have to do these. And you're going to see as I go through these names that all these guys are interrelated. There is a lineage through art that we can follow. So the Barg drawing course is fantastic, and we're going to jump now from Barg to Paul Ricker. Now, where'd that one go? This is the book they recommend at AU Arts, I believe. Here it is. If you're only going to buy one book, I think it's like 25 bucks, just this one. It has all the cool muscle stuff. When I applied to AU Arts, I just copied these drawings, and it got me into the school, so they must have been good enough. I didn't realize at the time that it probably didn't matter what I put in my portfolio, they were going to let me in anyhow. Paul Richter was a professor of artistic anatomy at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and I went to École des Beaux-Arts a few years ago, and you know what? Except for them speaking French, it's exactly the same as AU Arts. It's now a contemporary art school, so they don't do this stuff anymore. In 1857, this guy named Vanderpoel studied at my favorite historical art school and wrote a book. It's very simplistic, and it lays the groundwork into the Atelier or additive style. This guy eventually, like, he's drawing shapes and forms, a different way of studying than the old classical academies. And this guy studied at the Académie Julienne under Bouguereau, who is one of my favorite painters. And he went on to the Art Institute of Chicago. So you can see now that it's kind of in Italy, it spreads to France, and now it's going over to the United States. So let's look at someone who studied in France, École des Beaux-Arts. You guys will know this guy. Bridgman. Oh boy. This is my sketchbook. It's massive. But this is where I do all my studies. There's some Bridgman studies, studying the muscles. It shows the insertion points. There's a huge problem with Bridgman. I would say that out of everything that I'm telling you, this is the last thing you should learn, because you have to translate it. You can see I've got all my little tabs of things to study. But a lot of people, they like the look of Bridgman, and so they study it too early, and I can tell immediately looking at their drawings that they don't understand what they're drawing, but it does look like Bridgman. So save him for later. He, by the way, studied at École des Beaux-Arts under these guys, all of which learned from Jerome. Jerome was a contemporary of this guy's teacher, and they all were amazing, amazing guys who brought not just anatomy medically, but into the artistic realm that we know of it today. Now, we go into the freebie stuff. Andrew Loomis. If you don't know who he is, I'm so happy that I get to tell you today. I printed all these PDFs of Andrew Loomis off the internet for free. And they're the guidebook. It's like 1950s looking, man. But they have all the proportions of the head, of the body, and how to draw them. hands and stuff like that. So this, I would say, in the United States, not looking back to everything I showed before, would have been the first textbooks you would have gotten and started to work from. They have conventions that we still use today, but there are also mistakes within it that you have to become aware of so that you don't keep making them. Now, the other guy that's mentioned at the ACAD book here, so Dr. Ricker, École des Beaux-Arts, and the guy who translated it was Robert Beverly Hale. Robert Beverly Hale, he's one of my greatest heroes. He taught at the Art Students League of New York, and when he taught his drawing, there are like 3 videos of him on YouTube, and he kind of talks like a mobster. See? When he's teaching, it's kind of neat. Anyways, he would draw horses the size of my whole wall with chalk or pen on like a 10-foot pole perfectly. So he is a really good guy just to check out. But he also came up with the main teaching style that we do here, which are cranial masses. And so that is a little more intense to learn, but a lot more useful than Andrew Loomis's simplicity. If you're doing fashion and comics, this is fine. But you're going to want to amp it up for Beverly Hale. Beverly Hale wrote this book. And this is exactly what we're supposed to be talking about. I don't know if it's reversed for you guys. But it's a master class in figure drawing based off the masters. How to study Michelangelo. I'm going to be honest. This book is in the ACAD library. It's been signed out by me. Sorry, AU Arts, guys. I'm still behind the times. But I've taken this book out of there so many times that you can just see every stamp is by me. You can buy it again pretty cheap, but I just photocopied it. So that's a really good one. We're getting through it. Okay, Beverly Hale. And then we get into Frank Riley. Frank Riley studied under Bridgman and Jerome, and he came up with these Riley rhythms, which some of you guys may have seen on the internet. We have a teacher here that focuses just on those. Really good for learning short pose, but you have to learn them. And a lot of people who are teaching it on YouTube are doing it wrong, so be careful. There's another guy that came out of that same school, studying under Bridgman, and that's Bern Hogarth. I don't actually have his book. I don't like the style, but it's that really comic-y stuff. And he wrote Dynamic Anatomy, Drawing the Human Head, Dynamic Figure Drawing. It's always dynamic. So good for those who want to do comic books, as well as if you want to do more animation type stuff. Okay, whew, we're almost through it. I'm doing pretty fast here. Okay, so that's the ones you guys should really look at if you're going to invest your own money, or if you want to go online and find something. You can go get all the books in the world, but if you don't know what to do with them or how to study them, you're kind of wasting your time. Yeah, I just showed you like 10 or 15 of them, and I have more, but what is it that you need to learn to improve what you want to do? This is my argument going forward. A lot of people in the contemporary art world, if they can't do something, what they'll do is they'll label it, or they'll write the word hand because they can't draw a hand. Is it necessary in your work to draw an anatomical hand realistically, or not? If you don't have the skill and it's at the cost of your art, it's your job as the artist to improve your skill, to make better art. We don't know everything all at once. You get the degree, you walk out, and you're still always inventing and improving yourself. But that's what's exciting about it. Like, I'll never retire. Ever. I have to just die for my journey to stop. And so I can keep taking in and learning more and more things, which makes the practice of an artist really exciting. So I'm going to show you guys some other notable references and where to find things online for free as well. So you can go over to the U of C and you can study cadavers. Like, I know that's not master copy, but some of the knowledge you'll need to know, you can learn from that practice. So for $14, you can get their school for doctors anatomy book. It's spiral bound, and it's actual pictures and labeling of what the meat really looks like. Right? It's not as beautified. If you compare all the anatomy books, they can be drawing the same thing and trying to explain the same thing, but they don't do it in the same way. And that goes back to my point here about copying and improving. You will start to have remnants of whatever you study. So if you want it to look a certain way, you may not want to study from someone who doesn't give you that result. You don't have all the time in the world, and spending a lot of time on Leonardo da Vinci, if you hate his aesthetic, is probably a terrible idea. So the other good ones, if you want to learn the muscles, if you want to have fun, or if you want to be a massage therapist, you can get these ones. These are coloring books. And whenever I'm drawing or doing the classes, I do refer to a lot of these books. I've never colored this one, and I've dated a lot of massage therapists, and they always have these in their bathroom. So I would just sit down and, have a look. It's useful. I wouldn't go out of my way to get it, but if you have it, it can be fun to color. I have no idea where I got half these textbooks. They were probably like $2. Any anatomy textbooks know how to use them because they take up a lot of room and weigh a lot. For sculptors, I would suggest Stephen Rogers Peck. So these are all 80s and above, a much newer amalgamated lessons. And these guys are starting to focus on the biomechanics of how the body moves. And the reason you want to do that is if you have a photo of someone like this, but you need to draw it like this, you're going to have to alter and understand what you're doing. And you can find a lot of mistakes in master copies because they drew only from life. They didn't have photo reference. So you'll see strange truncations of shape and size, and it might be nice for you to understand that and then improve upon it. Another big one is Gray's Anatomy. Just the format is huge, and you can just see a certain style. A lot of these anatomical books are meant more for doctors than artists, which is why we do favor the red one. But just like going to Body Worlds, you can get a lot out of it. You might not need to know the same amount as a doctor as an anatomy artist. I can name every part. I just can't fix it. But it's strange how as an artist you have to have that same level of reverence and respect for the beauty of the body and maybe understand what it's doing, but I can't prescribe drugs. Not those kind anyway. So in modern times, people have been trying to fill the gap between this massive, this is only half of them. So this book came out a year or two ago. I got it on pre-order, so I don't know if it's become popular, but this is kind of the be it end all of how to study, of how to go through understanding these systems. And so a lot of it is Atelier method, but it actually has one of my favorite artists in here. I'm just going to show you guys the difference between an Atelier style drawing and the constructive method. So an Atelier style drawing is quite highly rendered, looks realistic. Often they'll have structural stuff beside them, so you can study the skeleton. And then they look like you could grab them. They're often done in charcoal, but they're kind of soft and a little bit ambiguous in areas. Whereas a structural drawer, this is actually a sculptor, Sabine Howard, is taking the artistry to a new level to explore and share more of what they understand. I absolutely love this guy's drawings, but it's a very different approach. It's this approach rather than that approach, and you get a very different look. So going back to what I said earlier, pick one approach and try to get really good and master that. Another great one is Steve Houston. So a lot of these guys are like the new generation. So they looked up to all the guys who made all these other books and references and did their own take on it. Much better for comic book kind of artists, and it makes easier short pose, because that's something that a lot of the old style guys, they were doing the long pose stuff. The same kind of stuff that I teach on my live stream. So here, it's much more expressive. It's a lot more fun, a little bit more comic-y. And a lot of times you can go on Amazon and do a preview looking through, because there's a lot of other good books, But I just want to set the stage for how you guys are going to think about this stuff. And then I'm going to plug how to just learn from me for free. So those are great, and you might have them. There is a guy named Stan Prokopenko, Proko.com. I think his videos are free. You could learn a lot of anatomy from that way. I haven't watched a lot of them, but the ones I've seen, I just love the production value. He's just like on a white screen, and he makes little skulls and a bunch of other resources. He had learned at Watts Atelier, which is near San Diego. One of my teachers here is a Watts type instructor, and I like their whole methodology, but the way that I learned to go about art, I wish I had just gone there because mine took like 15 years to get to the same place. That just going to the right place with the right teacher would speed you up. Now, we can't have models here right now. And so we need a resource for naked people. The people you date, those are always fair game for sure. Although don't draw their face wrong because they'll be very upset. And try to take a few pounds off the older ones. But there's New Masters Academy and Croquis Cafe. These are video, so they're already flat. It's not the same as studying in the round, but you can study your figure drawing from there. And a lot of the poses that you'll find on these resources are exactly the same as studying Leonardo or Michelangelo, going somewhere else for that info. I want to go back to another thing. So the Barg drawings are Barg drawing it and you're copying his drawing. But you can collect plaster casts. In fact, I got this guy 3D printed from one of my plaster casts. You could go to Value Village and find like cheesy sculptures all the time. And anything that isn't white, you could just paint white. But these resources are, come with me, fantastic. You know, these types of things that you can like, because what we really want to do is not just be able to draw like an old master who's already translated and flattened it for us, but we want to be able to translate our own thing, maybe hire our own models, have lots of bodies in the space together. So starting to draw timed and from a 3-dimensional resource is definitely the way you want to go. So you can get those. You can set up those little figurines. You can probably sculpt these if you have a sculpture class and some clay. So for me, I've been doing, since I got invited to do this, I've been doing master copies. So what you guys can do is go on the Atelier Artista website through video, or Atelier Artista has a YouTube channel. And these videos are me ranting like this, talking about crazy stuff sometimes. I'm surprised I haven't totally been banned. They have chucked out a few episodes, but that resource is there free for you. And sometimes just listening to the thought process as someone who's pretty good at what they do, working and talking about what they're doing, is more instructive than spending 3 months in a class where you're not getting personalized help. You might not be getting critique from me, but at the end of my videos, I switch the camera onto my resource, which is often on a flat screen TV while there's no models, and I'll compare and contrast my drawing. The first step really with master studies is you want to, I'll do a little hierarchy of what's important here. You want to do, the number one thing you want to get right is shape. If you're doing a Michelangelo copy or something, you don't want the shapes to be off, because rather than it be a torso, it looks like a thick leg. So anytime we're processing through our master copy, we need to think shape. Is the paper vertical or horizontal? That's the first lesson of art, right? Portrait or landscape style. Because you might need to measure off the sides, so shape. But what is, sorry, I'll turn towards the mic. What does shape consist of? If it's on a piece of paper, there's only height and width. Even though the thing's 3-dimensional, we need to get that shape in there. So proportion is built into it. But not just that, my arm going this way, foreshorten, is a far different shape than my arm going this way. And so we have perspective in there. So perspective, proportion, there's a bunch of other P's in there. Number two thing when we're doing a master copy. So we've got all that laid in. We want to get the value, whether something is light or dark. I would suggest the method of learning in the Atelier is you first work for 1 year in pencil, and you learn to draw your shapes perfectly, because pencil is very erasable. But the harder you press and color in a pencil, it gets shiny, right? It never turns black. So it's great because we can learn shape really well. Then you would upgrade to charcoal. And charcoal, like I'm probably covered in it right now, charcoal is a very messy material. It's very inexpensive, but you can get very, very rich blacks. And that's our next thing, which is value. What is light and what is dark? So you would spend a year doing charcoal. You would draw from life at an atelier in the afternoons for 3 or 4 hours every single day. And in the morning, you would do your bar copies, which would either be from the lithograph or, as you upgrade, from a three-dimensional object. So now you've spent 2 years just in black and white. You haven't touched paint yet. The next level of what you want to do with master studies is edges. There are 4, and I went to, I guess it was 2 years ago now, I went to Holland to study edges because I think the best person at that type of control is Rembrandt. Rembrandt was a sloppy, kind of loose painter. When you really look at his work, it seems very contemporary, but when you look at his edge control, things disappearing, or, you know, the Leonardo da Vinci with the sfumato, which is like the neck to the jaw, lost edges are really highlighted in there. If you draw an edge around everything all the time, like an aura, everything you draw is going to look flat and not realistic, if that's the goal you're after. So edges is the next high level. And I'm still working on those. They're hard. So you've got a hard edge, a soft edge, which you'll see in your shadows. You've got your lost edge, and I would say that that comes way later, but as you're studying, look for those things. How does the artist treat them? The very last thing with figure study is color. Okay, I use Zorn palette. Zorn palette means I only use 4 colors of paint. I use titanium white or lead white, which you probably can't use at the school, but it is the nicest white color. Black, ivory black, which the old masters regarded as blue. Vermilion, or cad red light. Both are toxic, great. And then yellow ochre. And so in the Atelier method, once you get up to this level, so this is year 3, this is year 4. In year 4, year 3, you start painting with black and white and grisaille and a little bit of limited palette. And then your final year, so it's kind of like 4 years of ACAD or AU Arts, but at the Atelier method, you get 4 years, no certificate of accreditation. You just get the skill, hopefully, when you walk out. In the best of both worlds, you would go to both, but that would be very expensive. But you're doing color, and at the end, you're allowed to use all the colors. And the challenge is you have to paint a still life of glass and shiny metals and perishables. So you learn that making this painting for 3 months, how to keep painting that same orange or pear, even though it's rotting and becoming part of your lunch every few days. So I love figure, but I love landscape. And so the two seem very different types of study to me, but we have to combine them in our practice. When you're studying from the masters, you should definitely be drawing what's around that figure too, which is my segue now. I'm going to do a master copy. This isn't it, by the way, of Patroclus tomorrow night, 6 till 9 on the YouTube channel. This was just like a grisaille study that I did in like half an hour. But I'll be drawing this, and what I'm going to do for you guys, if you're really interested, is outline with tracing paper on top every origin, insertion, and muscle on the back. Because the problem is people draw necks terrible, like cylinder necks. I call them popsicles. And the back. So if you're ever in a class or you're in a drawing situation and you're the one who's stuck on the bad side with the back, what do you got? Is a rectangle. But by doing a master study, where I do an anatomy tracing over top, you can do that to further enhance your master copies so that you really start to understand what's going on. It's all fine and dandy for me to copy Michelangelo, but I need to know where the serratus major is. Otherwise, I'm doing a poor copy. And any one of my teachers here, myself, any really good artist, it stands out so bad to us. We're just like, ugh, you know? It's like seeing a painting hanging crooked. It just gets under our skin. So between the teachers and I, we have a lot of like little sayings of comments of things that we notice in art, and it's our job to help you see it so that you don't continue to make those mistakes. And if you do a master copy today of this, and you do it on the anniversary a year later, you will be able to see how much you really learned and picked up through that process. I do one per week right now. Sometimes they're from sculptures that I photographed in Europe. We'll do a couple paintings, and you guys can see different methods of working. I did a contemporary artist master copy last week of Henry Yan, and I bought this actual piece off of him. It's right over here, because I liked it so much. And so I used it to copy. Now, of course, we can't afford to buy all the master copies we want, but I would suggest you get into a habit of doing them. The nice thing about them is all you guys are doing is making ideas constantly. It's tiring. This is like, you can have Netflix on, and you can just be drawing and making a copy, and you get something nice at the end. A lot of my bark drawings I sold. I don't know, they're not really what I would hang in my house, but you know, my mom loves them. So there is kind of a market for that. But when you're doing a master copy, you should not sign it Michelangelo. You should say after Michelangelo. You should definitely pay homage. Lots of them are dead, but tag them in your social media, because I find actually that because I have someone famous, or you know, people will draw Billie Eilish, you will get some social media leverage from what you're doing. So choose them wisely as well. Okay. Gotta take a breath. Did I make time? Yes.
10 minutes.
Okay. Guys, I'm sweating right now. It's not the lights. I work hard for you. I would love, maybe we can switch off the YouTube stream now, and I can go to your guys' questions and see if there's anything maybe I missed, I don't know, that might be useful to you guys. I hope you guys go and check out my YouTube and see if the style that I'm doing or what I'm teaching interests you. It's free, and it might just help you out in areas that you don't know that you need help with.
I was wondering if you could maybe send me a list of all the books that you referenced today, because some of us had missed some of the titles and the writers. If you
Yes.
just shoot me an email with the list, and I'll send it to all of the participants.
Yeah, so, because I have the books in front of me, that will take me a little bit, but I'll write you guys a little thing about each one, and it just won't be right away, but I'll get that done for you. And I'll find the ISBN numbers even. I'll do it right. I'll find that little number. But don't go spending all your money, guys. You're students now. The most important thing was the first thing I mentioned is prioritizing your time and getting your practice in. I'm only practicing once a week, and I'm noticing how rusty I'm getting just because I'm not putting the time in that I need. Like, it is like riding a bike, but you lose it fast. And I know that last time we went in this lockdown and then got closed, my drawing from life sucked for a month. Even though I'd been doing my master copies the whole time and practicing, like drawing from life is a whole other skill set. Managing the time and, like things move. It's a lot tougher. So I would say try to get that practice in. If nothing else, just draw your dogs and cats. They're made up of simple shapes and shadows too. The two most important things. Were there any questions on that chat that I didn't see?
Most of us were just kind of chatting about the books that you were holding up, because we missed some of them.
Sweet.
But if you guys want to vocally just say your questions, that'd be great.
Yeah, this is being recorded, and I'll go back through it because maybe I missed a gap there, you know? And then I'll write this down.
I did have a question. When someone is doing a master copy, do you recommend they use the same or roughly the same materials, or do you think it would be okay if they referenced like an oil painting but they used acrylic paint, like as an example?
Totally fine, because what are you after? You're after the structure of the body. This is not how he would have painted it, and tomorrow night I'll be drawing it in charcoal or pencil. I tried to match Michelangelo. He used red chalk. So when you're studying, is it because of the technique or is it just the look of it? You can make the look in watercolor if you want. So I definitely have no problem with that, because if I did that in watercolor, it would still look like a Michelangelo, you know? I come from a background of animation and cartoons. Like, the reason I went to AU Arts was to be a painter, but I actually graduated through sculpture. And, you know, these artistic parts of life bring you down these journeys. But what I had noticed and why I had gone to Europe to study was everything I drew looked cartoony. And I really wanted, I know I don't look like it, but I want my art to look like I'm a grown-up. And so I tried to get more sophisticated by learning these things. But also, I don't want you guys to feel pigeonholed by this. But, you know, if in my lifetime I draw one really impressive hand before I die, I'll have fulfilled my destiny. You know what I mean? You still have to play within it, but if you're not constantly pushing to grow and challenge yourself, you're resting on your laurels and you're not really getting anywhere. It should be hard. It should make you question everything you're doing in life a little bit. When I went to art school, there were people who seemed like they were naturally good, and as I learned more, it's like, well, their dad was an artist, or they broke their wrists, so that's why they know the names of all the muscles. When I taught, I was teaching figure at Body Worlds, and so I would walk around during the day with the medical staff, because they teach you and you'd get to like hold a brain. But most people, especially outside of doctors and artists, don't know anything about their physiology or their muscles or anything. And it amazed me because people would daze through looking at all the anatomy, and they would only ever stop on an item where they could share the knowledge. Like, oh, well, I broke my collarbone when I was skiing. And the rest of all the body stuff was blind to them, right? And it's the same going in arts. We don't know what we don't know. But I bet you if you broke your collarbone, you're probably really good at drawing it. Don't go breaking everything, but that is where we put our focus. That's why I say people ignore the neck. They treat it like a cylinder, right? And yet you have it's very complicated, but you have your sternocleidomastoid going down and splitting and going to the collarbone. So you could spend your whole time doing master studies, get the rest of the body right, but if you don't get the neck right, you've got a major weakness. What do they call that? Chink in the armor, right? You definitely need to find out where those things are and where you can improve. Otherwise, like when I taught at AU Arts, no hands, no feet ever drawn, it's just always torsos. And in your first year, it's boobs and penises the whole time. So, we're focusing on the thing that interests us most, and thus we're ignoring the things that might be very important to telling the story.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Got you.
Anybody else have any questions? Anything burning? I guess because there's so much vast resources out there. Where to start? Point number one. Where to start?
I did them in order.
Okay, so Leonardo da Vinci then.
Well, you should be aware of Da Vinci. You also have to translate Da Vinci. Do one. I have a little file folder of ones that I'm doing. The artists that I like Bouguereau and Tendema, pick what you like to look at because you're going to be spending time on it. I didn't mean to make all those Michelangelo videos for you guys, but once I started doing one, and you can hear me chatting, I'm like, that didn't turn out good, I'll have to do another one. It will unfold for you. I know that you guys have very busy class schedules, but the thing that I learned about AU Arts is you do what you want, and then you make it fit their framework, Just that's totally what the topic of conversation is. Do what you want, and then slide it in there, Draw with pink instead of red, and you're good to go.
Anyone else have any questions? We got a couple more minutes until 2.
Yes. I did good, guys. I'm so proud. I can't wait till you guys can come here because I invite you all to come check out this studio. It's a place I think that you feel a different type of creativity, you know? The thing that I wanted to make the studio for, other than having the cool studio, and I can't show you guys what's in here because I don't own the copyright on the project I'm on, but there's always impressive stuff and student work everywhere. You can get ideas, the lighting's beautiful, and the reason I did that was every other art school I've ever been in my entire life looked like a parking garage, or it's cinder block, white. Like even the art stores and stuff, like they're just white walls. You guys, we have no windows up there. The 5th floor, which was where a lot of my classrooms were the least creative places ever. And all the ateliers I've been to and schools in Europe, exact same thing. Exact same thing.
It's not just our school that
No.
was like a prison.
No.
Okay.
I know. I don't know if you guys know the story that it actually was designed by people who designed prisons.
Yeah, the guy who designed the building, he was a designer for prisons or something. Then he just decided to design like a school, but he didn't really go out of his comfort zone.
Yeah. Well, and whether or not that's true, I don't know. But, you know, when I gave the tours, I told that story. That being said, you don't need a nice creative space to make art. And the ateliers that I went to, the Paris Academy literally was a parking garage. The Florence Academy and Angel Academy, they were like, the walls are painted black and they've got curtains hanging everywhere. They don't want light coming in their room. I took a different approach. The building at C-Space, I'm on the 4th floor, and the windows are huge and gorgeous because I like the north-facing light. It's great for painting. And we do a lot of our figure drawing at night because then there's no light coming in the windows and I can control the setup. Although I also do really early mornings too, but it's really tough to convince people to be here by 9.
Any other questions? A couple more minutes before we wrap up.
Oh my God. There are a whole bunch of comments on there. Maybe you can filter through that, Leah, for me.
Yeah, I think most of them are, they couldn't really see some of your pictures. So they were flipping back and forth between the YouTube channel and the screen here.
Yes. Like the ones that I've drawn?
The ones that you were holding up in the books, they were hard to see because like both on the YouTube channel and here, they were kind of lagging a little bit.
The buffering. Okay. Good. No, I'm never doing this again, so don't worry about it. But any of my images and stuff, I'm on Instagram. I think I'm just Brian Bunny Batista. And then the Atelier has an Instagram, and I'm constantly linking them together. So you can actually see my bar drawings and stuff a lot better. In terms of these books, my verbal explanation is probably enough. Like, you need to kind of pick your approach. Don't weigh yourself down with all these options, and you'll get this. I'll write you guys something so you can say, you know what, I don't care what he says. I'm doing Bridgman. Even though it's tough, it might be worth it for you. Like I said, though, the main one is you just got to have this one. I think they make you have this one at AU Arts. I've had this copy since I went to school there. It's good. You know, the other thing is you need to stay away from the danger of knowing too much. These are approaches where you have to know so much, skills-based. Maybe inadvertently they're at the bottom because they do build a solid foundation. But the other unfortunate thing is that I saw when abroad at the ateliers, no one was creative. They didn't learn how to make ideas. They only learned how to copy, which is a great skill to have. But you really, like what we're trying to do here at this atelier is mix the two. And you guys at AU Arts, you get to drive your car whichever way you want to go, which is what's fantastic about that school. But it's really hard to find qualified instructors in this type of art there. So come here. You guys had Mark Vasquez, who is a fantastic teacher, and I think he's still up there and he does figure stuff. Maybe you haven't had him in your group yet, but there are many phenomenal artists and teachers in this town.
Yeah, this semester, but he's also in one of the sessions last semester, and he gave us some good tips on how to get started with setting up the studio and all that stuff. So really good stuff.
Vesco had a really good studio space.
He does?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a big one downtown.
To like my desk at home, you know.
Yeah. Well, if you're doing figure, you do need a lot of space. I actually here I have a model stand that's 2.5 start to move, and now you're seeing too much of the elbow. It's a lot harder to learn on an easel than it is a drawing donkey. Now, guys, if you go to the Atelier Artista YouTube, I show you in a video how to make one of these out of 2 chairs. I show how to properly sharpen a pencil. Everything you guys need to like go out there and be confident in the community in Calgary. It's really cool because you'll see the same people all the time. And I think a lot of people go to figure drawing because that's also their social life. When we get that back, it's just such a fun thing to do. You start to get to know the models. I have 33 models employed here, and we are usually 5 days a week. So you know, maybe a friend comes into town or you have an inkling to just get out. It's a fun activity, and it costs you $21 here. I don't know what it costs at other places, but here it's 3 hours, and all that info is on the website, although their website's pretty stripped down right now because nothing's going on, really. But I hope to see you guys here. I want to thank you guys so much for this opportunity to share just a little bit of what I know, to invite you on my artistic journey to my space. You know, the Calgary Arts, we're all here to support each other because this isn't New York. I think for 10 years, none of us are going to have competition. We should all be working together and promoting the arts and crafts and the people within the city. A lot of you, when you're done your education, will probably decide to leave, and that will be sad because the talent doesn't often stay. Because if you do want an artistic career, I'm going to be honest with you, it's near impossible to sell figurative art in this city. Most of my work is sold to the East Coast, commissions in England, or I get the East Coast United States, Jersey, stuff like that. If you do more Western art, and I don't mean cowboys, I mean landscape and abstract, you do a lot better Calgary and West. But if you're doing kind of classical art, you're looking at Montreal, New York, that seaboard, and then Europe. But it seems to be that figure is becoming really popular now. You know, within the last 6 or 7 years, I'm seeing more and more of it. I do want to give another segue. Mark Vasquez. Okay, so I said plan your time. Plan your time daily, get your practice, and don't overdo it just to try to finish something because it's not good for your brain or your spirit. But there is a time when you should overdo it. And there are these events that Mark started called Draw Till You Drop. And it was, you pay like $100 and you're eating pizza and drawing for 3 days straight. You're not sleeping there, but there is a reason to also push yourself over the edge to your arm doesn't work. You'll become a better drawer by going past what you think you're capable of. I have never made it through Draw Till You Drop. I've dropped every single time. So that's another thing to keep mindful of is I'm saying portion it out. It's a slow and steady, right? The graph of your artistic skills looks like this. Oh, God, that was a bad day. I heard someone was depressed. There's that one. Oh, I did something really good. But you'll notice the ups and downs, the plateaus. There's an upward trajectory for the most part, as long as you keep adding to it and you're not resting on your laurels and flatlining, essentially. Now I don't know which camera I'm talking to.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much for coming in. It's just after 2 right now, so if anyone has to go. But yeah, I guess if you have some time, are there any other quick questions?